We would like to thank your sponsor, Valley First, a division of First West Credit Union and a member-owned financial cooperative serving the Okanagan, Similkameen, and Thompson regions. They offer a wide range of banking and investment services for individuals and families. Valley First also has a talented business and commercial team to provide the expertise, products, and services local businesses need to grow and thrive.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Business Matters presented by Valley First, a division of First West Credit Union. I'm Rob Capello, and today we're joined by Brad Pedersen. Brad, thanks for joining me today.
So great to be here, Rob. I'm really looking forward to our discussion together.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. So, Brad, you're an award-winning entrepreneur, an angel investor, a thought leader, a business coach. Lots. In 2018, you founded and scaled Canada's top toy company, Tech for Kids, which we'll talk about. And then you co-founded Pella, which was a $100 million sustainable phone case startup. In 2021, you along with the team at Pella, successfully launched a record-breaking 9.8 million crowdsourced campaign for the Lomi, which is an amazing product, the world's first smart waste kitchen composter. And on top of all that, you have passion for family, fitness, adventure, and outdoor pursuits. So we have a lot to unpack for sure in half hour.
It's going to be busy for sure.
So, Brad, I'm curious if we can start. Where did you get your entrepreneurial spirit and path from? Like, where did the spark come from way back when you're a young kid, young teenager? Where did that journey start for you?
Yeah. Well, look, I kind of joke the fact that my life is a series of happy accidents. It wasn't obvious that that's what I was supposed to do, particularly to become an entrepreneur who went into toys. But I grew up in the prairies of Canada. I was surrounded by people who were focused on agricultural oil, which is what it's known for. And, I came from actually a line of chiropractors. My father was a chiropractor. My grandfather and grandmother were chiropractors. My great-grandfather was the first chiropractor in Denmark. So ever since I was just a little guy, I was told you're going to be a chiropractor like your dad one day. And that was the career path that was kind of preordained for me. That being said, as a kid growing up, I was a little bit mischievous, got into some trouble. I remember getting the strap 2 or 3 times in grade school, just because I was pushing the limits and boundaries and trying new things. And it was really all just because I was trying to explore possibilities. And I always had some kind of entrepreneurial tendencies. There's this question of like entrepreneurs made, or are they born that way? And so is it nature, nurture? And I think it could be a bit of both, but I definitely think there is a certain propensity that you grew up with that, is helpful in deciding you want to be an entrepreneur. And so, I just kind of at an early age got myself into things that eventually led up into businesses that were little hustles while I was in my teen years, and eventually led to a place where I had this really audacious idea that I wanted to get into the world of toys.
Interesting. And we're disappointment in the family. You're like, I'm not going to be a chiropractor.
I think there was an initial sense of like, well, he'll eventually come to his senses. He's going to go do this thing, and one day he's going to wake up and say he needs to really actually join this line of health professionals. So
too funny. So you mentioned you started and led one of Canada's top toy companies called Tech for Kids. I'm curious, how did that idea come together? Like, how did you get into toys to begin with?
Well, look, it's a bit of a circuitous path, series of happy accidents. So I read an article in a magazine when I was in my, early 20s, and it was about a kid who had invented a toy, and it was kind of a rags to riches story. And it was a flying toy. And I've always been playful. My wife still accuses me of being a big kid, and I love things that fly. And so I ended up buying some of these toys. I ended up like playing with them and going, wow, these are super cool. And then I had this idea, well, maybe there's an opportunity for me to help market these. And so I contacted the manufacturer, who was based in California. And fortunately for me, they were just as naive about Canada as I was about the toy business. So it was kind of like a perfect marriage of people that were, stumbling towards their future. And, I got into the world of distribution sort of by accident with that. So I started off kind of like a carny. I was going to different trade shows and events and festivals and throwing these things around and selling them out of a bag. And and realized real quickly that doesn't scale. So I ended up hiring some staff, and we put kiosks in malls, and then we ended up getting into stores. And over time, we actually built that up to become one of the largest toy distribution companies in Canada. But along the way, with a lot of aggressive growth, I found out the hard way that, you know, most entrepreneurs don't starve from lacking opportunities. They choke on biting off more than they can chew. Right. And I actually found a hard way. You can grow your business too fast. And so I ended up crashing and burning that company in 2006. Trying to fix it with some restructuring capital. Right. Restructuring is a fancy word for bankruptcy. Going through a BIA to get new capital in, and then ultimately bankrupting that company 2 years later because it, you know, it was a broken foundation. And, you know, I've come to learn that, you know, rock bottom can be a great foundation to build from again. And as it turns out, for me, the best gifts in this case came wrapped in ugly paper, because that stop forced me to rethink my future and to choose to start again. And I took all the things I didn't want to do anymore, and that became the foundation for the new business, which I launched, called Tech for Kids, and that was in 2009. And Tech for Kids went on to become a very successful business, more successful than the previous distribution company, because we went from distribution to manufacturing, went from being focused on Canada global. We no longer carried inventory, and that business eventually was merged with another toy company and exists today under the name Basic Fun, which is a manufacturer of brands like K'Nex, Tonka, Care Bears, and, you know, a number of other prolific brands.
So how was, when you're going through that, the first two times when you had to restructure, was it difficult for you to dust yourself off and get back at it? Were your days were like, I'm going to be a chiropractor, I'm not doing this anymore? Like, did that ever cross your mind?
Of course. I'm human.
Yeah.
You know, as I think in the moment, what I can tell people is that in the moment it sucked. Like it was absolutely, particularly because I think entrepreneurs in general, so much of their identity is attached to their businesses and what they do. You know, I birthed this business into the world, and so much of it was me. And by the way, I raised a bunch of friends and family money along the way. And so when that business went into distress and ultimately went bankrupt, there was an incredible amount of shame. Right. I mean, going back to my hometown was hard. You know, family meals at Christmas and Thanksgiving became very awkward. So, yeah, I mean, like anybody who was going through those difficulties, I struggled. I really struggled with like self-worth and trying to figure out, you know, whether or not I should just make a complete change to a different profession. But I've come to learn that, you know, struggles are actually what is important to actually build your strength, that your adversities, you can choose to turn those to your advantage. And you only become a failure when you get knocked down and you stay down. You know, failing is a part of succeeding, right? You got to fail forward. We talk about fail fast, fail often, fail cheap. And it is a part of moving forward. I mean, a child learning to walk, the first few steps, they fall and scuff their knees, right? Like they're literally failing to the point where they finally get enough steps in a row that they're actually walking. And so business and life is no different, that we should expect that we're going to see challenges, but actually those challenges are there to help forge your character. And so when I experience pain now, I always ask the question, what is the purpose of this pain? Like, not that I go seek it. Well, that's not true. I mean, I do go to the gym and work myself out to a point of pain, but the point is, there is a better version of you on the other side of the pain if you're willing to find the purpose for that pain. So yeah, it was hard, but it's a choice in terms of what happened and how you choose to respond to it.
Interesting. That's good. That's great advice too. So you dust yourself off, you relaunch, very successful. Where did the roads cross with Pella? Like where, or Pila? How do you pronounce first? Pila or Pella? Which one?
You tomato, you know, Porsche. You pick. So Pela actually is Spanish for peel. Okay. And by the way, I say peel all the time. That's how I call it. But, you know, the enunciation in Spanish would be more like pela. Okay. And it means peel. And it actually is a great example because we make the world's first compostable phone cases. We actually manufacture them right in Kelowna, which we're super proud of. We do all the design development there as well. And by the way, we ship them to like 180 countries around the world. So it's pretty cool that we've put, you know, Canada, British Columbia, Kelowna on the map that way. But they're the first compostable phone case, so which means at the end of life, they actually go back to the planet responsibly. So if you think about it from the perspective like an orange peel, like that's exactly what an orange peel does, right? Or an apple peel, and that kind of makes sense because we have Apple devices with our case on it. Right. And so it really is we're proving with this that, you know, there is a better way forward in terms of the way we do things. Most people are used to the idea of the make, take, use, waste economy, right? The last 100 years, that's what we've created. Prior to that, there was no waste. I mean, things were made out of organic matter that returned back to the planet responsibly. Everything that had to end of life was the beginning of something else's life. And it's only as we've come along, created these incredible materials like plastic, which, by the way, I'm not anti-plastic. They've had incredible, like our quality of life doesn't actually end up where it is without it. But we've turned a lot of things into single-use plastic. And single use is abuse because you make something out of a material that's meant to last for hundreds of years and then use it once and throw it away. And that doesn't make any sense. So we're showing that there's a better way to actually make things that actually have this graceful end of life. And it's really, you know, helping accelerate the responsibility, clean economy by moving more of these products to compostable materials.
So how did that opportunity come together? Like, and I'm sure it's a long story and we'll spend, but in a condensed version, how did that come together for you?
Yeah, well, again, you know, I would call it my inconvenient blessing. So in 2017, I merged Tech for Kids with another company in Florida to form a new company called Basic Fun that I already talked about. 90 days after that merger, I got fired. And the reason I got fired is that I was the CEO president of Tech for Kids. The other gentleman was the CEO president of his firm. We got together and on paper, everything looked awesome. But then when we put all the people together, the working style, the culture was not a great fit. And I've since come to learn there's no such thing as mergers. There's only acquisition because one culture is going to prevail. One way of doing things is what's ultimately going to become the new organization. And, you know, we just didn't see our philosophies lining up. But again, you know, how do I turn this adversity to my advantage? I got released back to the marketplace. And in that case, you know, I had newfound freedom as a result, and I had opportunities to reimagine my future. So I kind of sat back and I landed on 3 principles. I said, first of all, life plan before business plan, which I'd never done before, which is part of the reason I moved from Toronto to the Okanagan. I wanted to actually live that true. Second is my, you know, only awesome people rule. So, you know, find people who have aligned values and visions for the future and only work with them, people that will actually bring out your best and not be, you know, energy vampires by watching you succeed and be, you know, pulled down by that. And then third was only impact, only focus on things where you can invest your resources to make a meaningful impact. And so as I considered opportunities, you know, along came Pila and Matt Bertulli, who's the CEO there, and Jeremy, who's the original founder. The 3 of us had really complementary working styles, complementary experiences, gifts, if you will. And the 3 of us really came together and decided to do something very impactful. So we moved the company from Toronto to Kelowna. And, you know, now we're around 100 employees and doing business all around the world and really feeling super empowered by the fact that we're actually making our dent in the universe to make the world a better place, not only for us, but for generations to come. And it excites me to wake up in the morning knowing that that's a part of what we're doing.
That's amazing. And I know that you had a celebrity involved investment from Jay-Z I know that made the news. So I'm curious, how did that come about? Was that just from an investment firm? Like, how did he discover your company?
Yeah, look, you know, your network ultimately will determine your net worth, as, you know, one of my friends, Jason's likes to say. And I don't know Jay-Z personally. That wasn't, you know, my direct line to him. But we had a number of connections with folks in Toronto. And through those connections, we got a chance to get to know him and his firm, Marcy Venture Partners. And look, they've been great partners of ours. And I think, again, they were looking at, like you should in any investment, you know, is this idea a good idea? And then who are the people behind it? And if you have an idea that's different and that can stand out and build something unique, and there's a high quality team of people that are hungry, humble, and smart, then anything's possible. And so we feel very honored that they decided to back us and entrust us with their resources.
Right. Yeah, amazing. And no, you had another endorsement. The Kardashians had Lomi on their must-have list. So I was kind of thinking, I get the idea of the sustainability, but how did a phone case company develop a home composter? Like I get the connection for sustainability. I get that part of it, but how did that product come together?
Yeah, great question. And by the way, so Matt Bertulli, who's our CEO, and he's also the face of the Lomi ads. If you've seen the Lomi ads, you often see Matt. So he had a Zoom call with the Kardashians, and they were fangirling out over, that's the guy in the commercial. So who knew that was going to be a thing, right? But it's pretty cool. Look, it is, again, a series of happy accidents, a circuitous path that led to this. And as entrepreneurs, what are we doing? We're solving problems. Like we create that, like how you build something of significance is that you create value in the marketplace. And the more value ongoing, the more enduring and durable it becomes. And in this case, we had these compostable phone cases. We're shipping around the world. And then we find out that, most people don't have a home compost bin. They don't have access to composting infrastructure. So a bunch of people are sending them back to us, asking us to look after them, give them this end of life. And so we started saying, well, okay, this is a problem. I mean, if there's no home composting and, green bins, which are actually, there's very few green bins in Canada, there's more than there's in the States, but there's very few globally. And even if you do have a green bin program, most of them don't take compostable materials outside of like actual yard waste or food waste.
Right.
So, and the reason they don't do it because they don't know if it's compostable or if it's real plastic. So they just screen it out and they send it to landfill. So it's not really set up to handle it. So we started to tease this opportunity out, and we were initially going to go and build an industrial composting facility. We're going to raise funds to do it, and we'll take everything back and we'll look after it here ourselves. And then we just took a page from Elon Musk's playbook. Like, why couldn't every house become an electric charging station for cars? Mm-hmm. So why couldn't every house actually be an organic processing center? Furthermore, if you've had a green bin program, which I had living in Toronto for many years, it's gross.
Yeah.
It's I don't know anybody who enjoys it. It tends to be a blue job. Right. And I mean, every week I'd take it out. It's smelly. It would get to the curb, and 50-50 chance in the morning if I'd be picking it up again because the raccoons had put it all over the place, not to mention rats. And if you live in a place with bears, that's another issue. So long story short is we were just looking for a way to give our phone cases an end of life. And so that we stumbled on that opportunity with Lomi. And then we found out Lomi not only looks after, of course, the phone cases, but all food waste. And that food waste is a huge contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. So we've solved a problem for both reducing the greenhouse gas emissions as well as allowing for compostables. And then the unexpected great is that the output happens to be a superfood for plants that also sequesters carbon. So a Lomi is actually on track to become a carbon asset. And we believe it's going to be the most democratized way for us to actually achieve, a reverse of climate change, an opportunity to actually address climate change. If everyone had one of these in their home, we would be able to address what currently makes up 8% of the world's greenhouse gas emission, which is food waste. And that's significant.
That is significant. What an interesting story. I love the story about the Kardashian thing too. But I think that's now I get the connection, and I love how you took your current product and developed a new product, and then it created a whole different industry, for lack of a better word. So, you recently launched a book, and I want to make sure we get to that before we end time here. But you recently launched a book called Startup Santa. It combines the world of toys and business. So I'm curious, what inspired you to write the book? And then someone that hasn't read it, if they're going to pick it up, what are some of the takeaways they can expect from it?
Yeah, look, I had no intention to write a book. In fact, I already thought that, the world was a noisy enough place. And furthermore, it just seemed really daunting. Writing a book is something I felt like it would just be a lot of work. But what I wanted to do was to capture some of the experiences of my past, because the thing I've come to learn is that, your mind, your brain is really good for coming up with ideas, but it's not very good for retaining information. We tend to have a very leaky memory, and we have a lot of, what I would say recency biases just of what's happened recently, not in the long term. So I just started to create it as a memoir. Right. And as I was going down the path of doing that, some of my friends, colleagues said, "Hey, I hear you're writing something I'd love to read." what you've got. So as I started to put out some of the material, some of them said, hey, it'd be incredibly selfish if you didn't release this to the wild, because there's a bunch of information here and experiences that people would benefit from. So the real purpose of this book is, how could a founder, somebody who's starting off the business, benefit from the wisdom of my wounds? Because while I don't have a formal MBA, right, I tell people I have a PhD in DUMB from the School of Hard Knocks. Yeah. I have done so many dumb things over my time in business. And I wanted to have a way to capture some of those ideas. So I tell people this is really not a what to do book. It's a what not to do book. Here's the things I would say you don't do. And I had some fun with it because, I am a toy maker from the North, right. The North Pole, we have the closest proximity to it being Canadians. Yep. And so I took iconic toys that we would all know, like Etch-a-Sketch, Monopoly, G.I. Joes, tell a bit of the history of the toys, where they came from, what those toys are trying to teach us, because there is, as we play, we're growing, we're developing. It's part of our learning and development process. And then take stories from my experience of being a maker in toys, and then connect the ideas together at the end of every chapter, kind of pulling the key principles and lessons learned. And so Startup Santa, a toy maker's tale of 10 business lessons learned through timeless toys. And I think it's a fun read. It'll certainly be timely for the holidays. And if you're a startup founder, I think there could be a bunch of ways that you could avoid some of the pain that I had to endure during my journey as a toy maker.
In the book, you talk about a framework. I think you call it the quality of life quadrant. Can you explain what that means and how founders can use that when they're growing their startup?
Yeah, that's great. Great question, actually. So the idea is that there's kind of a chart that I show that talks about engagement, our level of engagement, as well as our contentment level, our fulfillment level in life. And we all start off as founders as the rookies, right? We come into it with like expectations, and the world is our oyster and all these possibilities. And then as we start to have the courage to lean into creatively attacking problems, there's usually one of three outcomes that happens. We hit a wall and we decide to give up, in which case we become the victim. And the victims, they start pointing at external circumstances and start blaming them for why they are in the position they are. And I talk about them having the 3 Bs. They're blind to the way that they co-created that situation. They're blaming, they're begrudging the people who are out there who are actually doing what they wanted to be doing, but they're not doing it. And then finally, they just get bitter. And this is like Nelson Mandela saying, trying to do harm to others is like, having bitterness towards others is like trying to drink poison, thinking you're going to do harm to the others. And actually the only person you're doing harm to is yourself, right? So that's the first place you can go to. The second one I call the bystander. And these are the people who initially get some traction, they get some momentum, they get going, but then they get knocked down and they kind of just stop because it's too hard. And they just decide not to lean into the possibilities because getting outside their comfort zone is just uncomfortable. And they just get to this place where they just would choose to be comfortable. They have some means, but their engagement level falls back. And these guys fall into what I call the 4 Ps, where they're motivated by power, prestige, possessions, and pleasure. And they basically use people to acquire things, when really the formula for that success is to acquire things and then use them to create meaningful relationships with people. Right. But and those people often also become the villains. They go after and they attack. They try and make themselves feel better by belittling others. Yep. And then finally, the third is what I call the hero or the champion. And this is the person who has high engagement and also high satisfaction because they're leaning into life and all the possibilities that can come along with that. And those people are focused on what I call the 4 Cs. And that's challenges, contributions in terms of charity and or creativity, connections, and that's the relationships that they build with people that allow them to really flourish in life. And where it comes down to, if you ask yourself, what are the most important memories that you have to this point in life? When I ask people that question, they usually talk about when they got married, when they had kids, a graduation event, when they actually achieved some kind of goal like a marathon. Those are the 4 Cs. Yeah, most people spend their time focused on the 4 Ps. They're going after changing extrinsic things. So anyway, so just in summary, you can be a victim, a bystander, or a champion. And you choose based upon the journey. And I encourage people to focus on becoming the champion and the hero of their own journey.
Interesting. There's a sentence in there or a phrase that uses says slow is smooth is fast. Can you explain what you mean by that? Because I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, it actually comes from the Navy SEALs. And
okay.
It's a part of the way that they think about when they're moving into a zone. You know, there is this urge to rush quickly. But when you rush quickly, you start making a series of mistakes that you have to remake decisions about. And so therefore, because you're stopping to remake decisions, you're slowing down the overall process because you're not making quality decisions. You're doing them in frequency. So the idea that, you know, a lot of entrepreneurs, especially in the beginning, are nimble and quick, and that's an advantage, and it should be an advantage. But there comes a point when you start building an organization, you start getting to a place of scale where you need to slow down and make better quality decisions. Because if you're making fast decisions, you're going to whipsaw your organization and frustrate them, right? And people thrive under clarity, simplicity, and certainty. And when you make a lot of rapid decisions, it's really hard to give them those three things. So that is one part of the lesson that I talk about from the GI Joes in the book.
Right.
And then there's another section that we talk about called, you know, advance, protect the flank. And those two lessons are kind of tied together.
Interesting. So beyond business, Brad, what drives you personally? Like, how do you balance your professional ambitions and personal passions and family and all that? Where's the driver for you there?
So the final chapter in my book, it's actually a bonus chapter, and it's about wearing out and not rusting out. And, you know, I am, one of my mentors, Jim Rohn, said, you know, in life, you may not be able to do all you find out. Make sure you find out all you can do. And as I think about that, and there's a book that was written by a palliative care nurse by the name of Bronnie Ware. And she was from Australia, and she was looking after people in their dying days.
Right.
And she found there was a common theme to what they were saying and regrets they had. And the amazing thing is, of the top 5 regrets, which, by the way, I was like, okay, they must be regretting, like they made a decision, they did something and they're feeling bad about it. But no, the top 5 regrets, 4 of the top 5 for things they didn't do, things they didn't have the courage to do. You know, they would have invested more time traveling. They would have invested into relationships. They would have tried that business venture. I mean, it's kind of a crazy end of life story, and sort of sad. And the one thing that they regretted doing was working too much, which was giving them no capacity to try and do other things. So as I think about that, I think about, I want to make sure that when I'm laying on my deathbed, that I've left it all behind on the field of life, that there's nothing left to squeeze, that I've soaked up all of the good things that life has to offer, and I've squeezed it dry of every opportunity. And because I'm a big kid, I tell people I want to die young as late as possible, meaning I want to stay young at heart. And I think that's really important for all of us, because kids are full of possibility, and that's one of the most admirable traits. And I hope that we can all be the same.
Love it. With your involvement with Lomi and Pila, like sustainability is obviously a focus of yours. I'm curious, what do you think needs to happen for more business to focus on intertwining business and sustainability? Some people think sustainability is too expensive. I'm not going to do it because it's going to cost more money to produce and I know it's a big question, but what do you think needs to happen? Is there a shift that needs to happen so businesses have more focus on that?
Look, I think it all starts with awareness. That is the first step. I'm not going to tell anybody to blow up their business model, because that's not helpful. And the other thing I want to say is this, is that perfection is the enemy of progress. And if we hold ourselves to a perfect standard, we will never get to a place where we're actually progressing in a meaningful way. There was a time when we thought it was completely normal to power the world with whale oil.
Right.
Now, there was entire industries built around that. I mean, like most of the Eastern Seaboard was built up on the whaling industry. It seems crazy today, but that's, that's how we got some of our energy. Or actually the other, so while they were doing that, they were also collecting bat poop. So those are the two things that they were doing to like get energy. And then we discovered coal, and it's like, oh, okay, there's coal. And then we discovered petroleum. And petroleum's got all these other things. And now we're discovering, whoa, there's a whole bunch of like negative side effects from having a whole bunch of these petroleum based materials that, turn into plastics and also pollute the atmosphere. So it's this awareness piece where we're starting to think about, okay, now we can move to a better future, which is more focused on this giant reactor in the sky called the sun, and how can we harness that energy and or the wind and or the waves. There's all kinds of other ways that create opportunity. But at the same time, you have to confront the brutal facts of where we are today. So I'm ultimately a big believer in the triple bottom line, but not at the expense of people's standard of living for the moment. So I tell people that they should be aware that they make impact. Like, to suggest that what you do is in a vacuum is just to be ignorant. So everything you do in your business has some sort of impact. And with that awareness, how can we start making the steps today that move us to become more sustainable, that embrace more green and clean tech in the way that we do things? And eventually we will create that future just by the awareness and being focused on it. I just happen to have the privilege of being in a company that's directly focused on it. Right. But I understand that if you're currently working in an oil field company, that you have a different dynamic than me. And I'm not suggesting that you should be cutting off your current standard of living just to be able to focus on this. It's got to be something that makes sense and that is sustainable, which starts with economics.
Interesting. So looking ahead, Brad, what's next for you? Are there any new ventures or projects on the horizon that you're excited about that you can talk about?
Yeah, look, I think, within Pila and Lomi, we are continuing to innovate. There's a bunch of new things that we're working on, and I'm excited to share those with the world. Most people will see that stuff soon. Yeah. And then I'm launching the book, and on the other side of the book, I actually am doing some coaching and some mentoring, and also, working with some local businesses and helping young entrepreneurs get their ideas and bring them to reality. That's an area I have expertise on, how to make things and how to take it from idea to reality. And if there's a way that I can help other people do that, then I'm happy to participate if in fact I can create value.
That's amazing. Well, Brad, thank you for spending some time with me this morning. I know you're busy. You said you have a few podcasts today, so thank you for spending some time. And it's a true testament of, like, I would say the entrepreneurial journey is unique, and it's always filled with challenges and triumphs, and it's inspiring to hear that. Like, I love the analogy when it's only a failure if you get knocked down, you don't get back up. Like, I love that quote. So I think that's something to think about, and if we can make positive impact while we're doing, I think that's a win-win for everybody. So thank you for sharing your story and for joining me today.
Rob, it's been a pleasure.
Awesome.
Great hanging with you.
Awesome. So our listeners, thank you for tuning into Bits and Spanners, and have a great day. Thanks, Brad.
We would like to thank your sponsor, Valley First, a division of First West Credit Union and a member-owned financial cooperative serving the Okanagan, Similkameen, and Thompson regions. They offer a wide range of banking and investment services for individuals and families. Valley First also has a talented business and commercial team to provide the expertise, products, and services local businesses need to grow and thrive.